I trusted the man I married with my life, literally, until I found out he spent the $45,000 I saved for surgery on his ex. And no, I didn't just cry about it. I made sure she got the hospital bill with his name on it. Let me tell you something that still feels like a nightmare. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you gave them control over your health and future, you'll understand. This is what happened to me and how I dealt with it. I'm Claire. I'm 34. And for the past few years, I've been living with constant back pain after a car accident. I couldn't stand too long, couldn't sleep properly, and walking for more than 10 minutes was a struggle. After trying every therapy and treatment possible, doctors said I needed spinal fusion surgery. It was my only real chance at living a normal life again. The only problem? The surgery wasn't fully covered by insurance. I needed $45,000, so I saved. Every bonus, every side gig, every penny I could. And finally, I had enough. That's when Daniel, my husband, said he'd take care of it. He wanted to manage the money, so I didn't have to stress. He said he would keep it in a joint savings account, and that he'd even watch the balance closely. I trusted him. I didn't ask questions. After all, this was the man I stood by when he was jobless for a year. I worked extra hours while he sat at home depressed, and I never once complained. But I should have known something was wrong. He started acting strange, distant, always on his phone. He took long phone calls in the garage. Sometimes he'd get quiet when I walked into the room, but I thought maybe he was just stressed at work or tired. Then one day before a pre-op appointment, I went to check the bank account. My heart dropped. There wasn't $45,000 in there. There wasn't even $4,000. The account was empty. I thought it was a mistake. I called the bank. They confirmed the withdrawals. All done over the past few months. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking. That night, I asked Daniel. He didn't even try to lie. She needed it more, he said calmly. She? I asked. Heather, he replied. His ex-fiancée. In that moment, I felt like my whole world cracked. My future, my health, everything I worked for, gone. And he didn't even look sorry. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just stared at him, wondering how someone you love could betray you like that. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let it end like that. I was 29 when the accident happened. A car ran a red light and hit me on the driver's side. I was lucky to survive, but my lower back took most of the damage. At first, doctors said rest and therapy would help. I tried it all: physical therapy, injections, pain meds. For a while, I believed it would get better. But 5 years later, it only got worse. Some mornings, I couldn't even get out of bed without help. Standing too long made my legs go numb. I had to leave my full-time job and take a part-time position just to manage the pain. Every day felt like a battle. The worst part, no one could see the pain, so people assumed I was fine. Daniel used to be supportive, at least in the beginning. He'd help me with the groceries, rub my back when I cried from the pain, even go to doctor visits with me. But slowly, things started to change. He stopped asking how I was feeling. He got annoyed when I asked for help. And when I finally told him about the spinal fusion surgery, my last hope, he just nodded and said, "If you think it'll help, go for it." The surgery was expensive. Insurance would only cover part of it. The rest, $45,000, had to come from us. It wasn't easy, but I saved every dollar I could. Birthdays, holidays, bonuses, everything went into that fund. Daniel promised to handle the money and moved it to our joint savings account for safekeeping. That's when I started seeing red flags. Daniel became secretive about our finances. Every time I asked how the savings were doing, he'd say things like, "It's fine, don't worry," or "Let me check later." Later never came. He started taking long phone calls in the garage, late at night. Sometimes I'd walk in and he'd quickly hang up or pretend it was work. I asked him once, "Is everything okay with the account?" He smiled and said, "Claire, you worry too much. I've got it under control." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He was colder, less present. He barely looked me in the eye anymore. I told myself maybe it was work stress or something he wasn't ready to talk about. But in my gut, I knew something had shifted. I just didn't know how bad it really was. Not yet. The day before my pre-op appointment, I stopped by the bank. I just wanted to check the account one last time before finalizing everything with the hospital. The surgery was scheduled, my paperwork was ready, and the specialist had blocked off time for me. I was nervous but hopeful. This surgery was supposed to give me my life back. I walked up to the teller, smiled, and asked for a printout of our joint savings account. She handed me the sheet without saying a word, but as I looked down, my stomach dropped. The number on the paper wasn't $45,000. It wasn't even close. It was $317.67. My hands started to shake. I went through the statement line by line, trying to make sense of it. Over the past 3 months, the money had been withdrawn slowly, in chunks, $2,000 here, $5,000 there. Each entry was marked with vague descriptions like online transfer or payment. No names. No details. I asked the teller for help. She pulled up the digital records, but they all traced back to our account. No fraud. No mistakes. Just someone, Daniel, quietly draining everything I had worked for. I walked out of that bank in a daze. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for what felt like forever. My surgery was off. Just like that. I didn't even have enough left to pay for the pre-op consultation. I wanted to scream, but I was too numb. That night, I waited for Daniel to come home. He walked through the door like nothing had happened, kissed me on the cheek, and started checking his phone. I didn't wait long. "Where's the money?" I asked quietly. He didn't even flinch. "What money?" "The surgery fund. It's gone." He paused, then sighed. "Claire, she needed it more." I blinked. "She? Heather." I felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. Heather, his ex. The one he barely ever talked about. The one he said he hadn't spoken to in years. I felt sick. "You gave my surgery fund to your ex?" I whispered. "She has a kid now. She's struggling. You'll be fine. You always figure things out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, staring at a man I no longer recognized. The man I cooked for, cared for, stood by during his lowest moments. He gave my future away like it was nothing, like I was nothing. He left the room without another word, just walked off like the conversation was over. And that's when I knew I wasn't just hurt. I was done. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head. She needed it more. I needed answers. I needed to know who this Heather really was, and why Daniel thought her problems were more important than my health. Heather. I knew the name. Daniel had mentioned her once or twice, his ex-fiancée from years ago. He said they ended things badly and hadn't spoken since. I never thought much of it. Every couple has a past. But now? I wasn't so sure. The next day, I called my sister Jenna and told her everything. She didn't say, "I told you so," though I could hear the rage in her voice. Instead, she offered to help me find out what was really going on. Turns out, Heather had just moved back to town a few months ago. She had a little boy about 5 or 6. Rumors were going around that she'd come back after a rough breakup. Some people said she was struggling. Others said she'd landed on her feet. So I started digging. I found Heather's public social media profile. Nothing was private. She shared everything. And what I saw made my blood boil. There she was, smiling in front of a brand new SUV with a caption that read, "New beginnings, new ride." A week later, another post showed her and her son in front of a cute rental house, all decorated and cozy. She wrote about finally finding the right place for her little family. Then came the biggest punch in the gut. Photos of her son's first day at a private school. Uniform, backpack, everything. Struggling? Really? I couldn't stop staring at the screen. New car. New house. Private school. Meanwhile, I couldn't afford to see my doctor. I couldn't walk without pain. I couldn't sleep through the night. And Daniel took everything I had just to help her start over. It hit me then. He didn't just help her. He was trying to get her back. Why else would he be sending her money behind my back? Why lie about it unless he was hiding something? My heart didn't just hurt, it broke. Not because he cheated, but because he made a choice. He saw me suffering, saw me falling apart every day, and still chose her. He didn't just steal my money. He stole my trust, my future. And I was done being the quiet, understanding wife. I've been in pain before, real, physical pain that left me breathless. But nothing compared to this. After I learned about Daniel giving my surgery fund to Heather, everything inside me felt like it broke at once. The surgery was officially canceled. I had no money, no options, and now no husband in the real sense of the word. My body hurt more than ever. I could barely get out of bed without crying. Some mornings, my legs felt like they didn't belong to me. My back would seize up halfway through standing, and I'd just sink to the floor, trying not to scream. But even that pain didn't touch what I felt in my chest. The betrayal lived there, burning like fire that wouldn't go out. Daniel didn't even apologize. He moved into the guest room and acted like we were just going through a rough patch. He still left his coffee mug in the sink, still watched TV in the living room like nothing had changed. The way he ignored the damage he'd caused, like he wasn't the reason I couldn't walk straight, made me feel invisible. I tried to keep it together, but I couldn't. One night, I finally called Jenna. I could barely get the words out. I just whispered, "I can't do this anymore," and she was already on her way. She picked me up and took me to her place. I collapsed onto her couch, both from the pain and the sheer weight of everything crashing down on me. She tucked a blanket around me and held my hand while I cried. I hadn't cried properly until that moment. I felt like a failure, like everything I'd fought so hard for had slipped through my fingers. But Jenna didn't let me stay there for long. "You are not going to let him win," she said firmly. "You fought through worse than this, Claire. You didn't spend years saving that money, fighting that pain, just to roll over now." I sniffled and tried to speak, but she cut me off. Don't say you'll move on. Don't say you'll forget it. Do something. Fight back. Something shifted in me then. A tiny ember, buried under all that pain and disappointment, started to glow. She was right. I had been strong for so long. Too strong to let someone like Daniel ruin everything. I couldn't change what he'd done, but I could make damn sure he didn't walk away without consequences. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew I was done being the victim. The more I thought about what Daniel had done, the more I realized I needed more than closure. I needed justice. Jenna wasn't letting me sit in silence either. She said, if you want to stop feeling powerless, start by knowing everything he's hiding. So we got to work. We started going through old bank statements, credit card bills, and emails. I had access to everything. Daniel never bothered changing the password. Maybe he didn't think I'd look, but I did. And what I found made me sick. There were multiple payments made from our joint credit card, all going to places that didn't make sense. One was a $1,200 charge at a luxury baby store. Another was a $3,500 payment for a rental deposit. There were regular Venmo transfers too, small amounts, but they added up fast. All of it traced back to Heather. Then Jenna pulled up a lease document from the email account. It was for a brand new SUV. And guess whose name was on the lease? Daniel's. Heather was driving around in a car under his name, living in a house he paid the deposit for, and buying things for her child using our joint money. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a full-blown setup. He built her a life and used my body, my pain, my future to pay for it. Jenna sat next to me and said, we've got the paper trail. What are you going to do with it? I stared at the receipts, the statements, the transfer logs. It was all there, proof of everything. He used marital assets without my knowledge. He committed financial fraud. And if Heather took that money, knowing we were married, she could be dragged into it too. That's when the idea hit me. If Heather got the benefit of the money, I said slowly, then she can handle the responsibility too. I didn't want to scream or throw things. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be precise. So I called a friend of Jenna's, Rachel, a lawyer who owed her a favor. I scheduled a free consultation to go over everything. As I hung up the phone, something in me settled. Not peace exactly, but clarity. They thought they could do this behind my back, that I'd just fall apart and go away. But I wasn't disappearing. They wanted to play dirty. I was about to play smarter. With Rachel's help, I put the plan into motion. We drafted a realistic-looking invoice for my spinal fusion surgery. Every detail down to the hospital name, billing code, and due date. The total? $45,000. The bill listed Daniel as the financial guarantor, the same way he'd promised to be when he took control of the money. At the bottom, I added a short message in simple, polite handwriting. Since Daniel says you needed the money more, I assume you'll be paying this bill. Thanks for your support. Jenna and I folded it neatly, slid it into a manila envelope, and sent it via certified mail to Heather's shiny new rental house, the one Daniel helped pay for. I even added tracking, just to be sure it arrived. And then we waited. 3 days later, around noon, my phone buzzed. Jenna looked at me and raised an eyebrow. Showtime. Less than an hour after that, I heard banging on my front door. It was Daniel. He stormed inside, his face red and furious. What the hell did you send Heather? I calmly reached for my phone and hit record. You mean the bill? I said, pretending to act confused. Well, since she got the money for my surgery, I figured she could handle the payment too. I just thought it was fair. You're insane, he snapped. She's threatening to press charges. Says this is harassment. I shrugged. Let her. I have the bank statements, the credit card receipts, the wire transfers. Everything points back to you. She benefited from stolen marital funds. If she wants to take it to court, I'd be happy to go. He stood there, seething, fists clenched, like he didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't cry, didn't beg, just stood still and stared him down. You could have just talked to me, he muttered. I did. And you chose her. He tried to guilt me, saying I was overreacting, that I was ruining his life over a few mistakes. A few mistakes? I repeated, my voice low. You didn't just hurt me. You stole from me. You left me in pain while you tried to win your ex back. You think I'm the one ruining your life? Daniel, you did that all by yourself. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just recorded every word. When he finally left, slamming the door behind him, I stopped the recording and sent it straight to Rachel. Evidence. Clean and simple. Heather wanted to play the victim. Daniel wanted to play the hero. But now? They could both play with the bill. Signed, sealed, delivered. Things unraveled faster than I expected. 2 days after Daniel's outburst at my apartment, I got a call from Rachel. She was practically laughing. Heather's lawyer just reached out, she said. She's threatening to file fraud charges against Daniel. Says she had no idea the money came from stolen marital asset. I wasn't surprised. The second the bill showed up, Heather probably realized what kind of mess she'd stepped into. She thought she was getting a second chance at love and a comfortable life. What she actually got was legal risk and a paper trail with her name all over it. Daniel, of course, panicked. I heard from a mutual friend that he tried begging Heather to stay quiet. He even offered her more money. But she was done. She cut him off completely, blocked his number, sent back the car keys, and moved out of the rental. Just like that, his fantasy life with his ex was gone. But it didn't stop there. Remember that joint credit account Daniel used to pay some of Heather's bills? I had co-signed on that. So I made sure the fraud reports were properly filed and the statements sent to his employer. He worked in finance, and they didn't take kindly to ethical concern. Within a week, he was let go. Just like that, the paycheck he always bragged about disappeared. I wasn't done. Rachel helped me file for legal separation and start proceedings to sue for marital asset misuse. I submitted everything, every transfer, every charge, every message. And with Heather refusing to back him up, Daniel had no defense. He tried calling me, texting, even showed up at Jenna's once. But I wasn't interested in explanations or half-hearted apologies. I wasn't interested in his tears. I was interested in justice. Then came the final blow, the house. Without a job and with legal costs piling up, Daniel had no way to keep paying the mortgage. The bank sent a notice. The house was going on the market. Funny how fast things fall apart when they're built on lies. He took everything from me and thought he'd walk away clean. Instead, he lost everything: his job, his reputation, his fantasy with Heather, and the house we once shared. Me? I had nothing left to lose. And for the first time in a long while, that made me feel powerful. Starting over wasn't easy. Nothing about my life looked the same anymore. My marriage was gone. My health was worse. And the money I worked so hard to save had vanished into someone else's life. But I wasn't broken. Not completely. Not forever. With Jenna's help, I moved into a small apartment closer to her place. It wasn't much, just one bedroom and a tiny kitchen, but it was mine. Quiet, peaceful, a place to breathe. The pain didn't magically go away. I still had trouble getting out of bed some mornings. I walked with a cane now, something I used to be embarrassed about. But with everything I'd been through, that cane started to feel like a badge of survival. I wasn't ashamed anymore. I was alive. I was standing. And that was enough. Jenna and a few close friends pushed me to do something with my time, something that gave me purpose. I'd always loved art and hand lettering, so I opened a small Etsy shop. I started selling hand-painted quotes, cards, and custom gifts. Orders were slow at first, but soon people started finding my work. I wasn't getting rich, but it helped pay the bills. It reminded me that I could still create something beautiful, even in the middle of pain. Meanwhile, I took Daniel to small claims court. I knew I wouldn't get all the money back, but I wanted to prove a point. I showed the judge every document, every receipt, every financial move he'd made behind my back. He didn't even try to fight it, just sat there quietly as the truth was laid out. I won. It wasn't the full $45,000, but it was something. Enough to remind him that actions have consequence. Rachel, my lawyer friend, helped me set up a GoFundMe to cover the rest of my surgery. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want pity. I didn't want people to think I was begging. So I made the message clear. This isn't charity. This is justice. Every dollar stolen from me went to lies. I'm simply taking back what was mine with interest. People responded. Strangers left comments saying they were inspired by my strength. Old coworkers donated. Even some of Daniel's old friends sent money, with messages like, "You deserved better." Every donation felt like a small piece of power coming back to me. No, I wasn't healed yet. I still hurt. I still limped. I still carried emotional scars that would take a long time to fade. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. A few months after everything fell apart, I got a phone call that stopped me cold. It was the hospital billing department. They told me my spinal fusion surgery had been fully paid for, every cent. No balance. No payment plan. Just covered. I asked who paid, but they said the donor chose to remain anonymous. I sat there in silence, staring at the floor. I had my guesses. Part of me believed it was Heather. Maybe she saw just how deep the damage ran. Maybe seeing Daniel lose everything, his job, his reputation, even her, was enough to make her realize the part she played. Maybe this was her way of making it right without ever saying the words. Whoever it was, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. The day of the surgery, I lay on the hospital bed, staring up at the ceiling, not scared, not nervous. Just ready. Ready to stop carrying pain that didn't belong to me. Ready to stop letting betrayal define my days. Ready to take back my life. Recovery was slow but steady. For the first time in years, I stood up without wincing. I walked a few steps without the cane. I felt my spine healing, but more than that, I felt my heart harden in all the right places. Stronger. Sharper. A week after the surgery, I wrote Daniel one last letter. No anger. No pleading. Just the truth. Thank you for teaching me what betrayal looks like. I hope the bill taught you what consequences feel like. I didn't expect a response. I didn't want one. It wasn't for him. It was for me. My closure. My final word. I didn't forgive him. Forgiveness wasn't owed just because someone falls apart after getting caught. But I did move on. I let the hurt burn out. I let the anger pass through me like a storm. What was left behind wasn't bitterness. It was peace. I started walking farther every day. I added new items to my Etsy shop. I laughed more with Jenna. I smiled at the future. Because in the end, I got something Daniel never expected. I got up. I walked away. And I never looked back. What would you have done if you were in Claire's place? Fought back like she did, or walked away quietly? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear them. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new one.